So more CO2 equals more plant life, more crops, which means more everything, right? Because everything starts there. And if we have less CO2, then we die. Everything dies because even the polar bears can't survive eating ice off the North or South Pole. To have more ice and snow because we're afraid of heat because somebody told us that energy was bad doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. You think about carbon dioxide. Every single thing we've been told about it makes zero sense. You're not carbon based life. There's 0.025% in the crust and there's 0.04% in the atmosphere. Somehow you're 18.5% what is made out of like charcoal, graphite, and diamonds. That's what that turns into. But silicon, that stuff that basically is required for your skin, for your hair, for your tissue, for your joints, for your bones, everything. The thing that makes up 27.7% of the Earth's crust is also readily available in bananas. That thing, that's what you're not made out of, but coal. Yeah, that makes sense. Fossil fuels aren't going anywhere. You're not going to run out of fossil fuels. You're not going to run out of oil. Why? Because literally oil, right? The derivatives from oil create plastic. Plastic, when you heat it at the absence of oxygen, creates oil and natural gas. Isn't that funny? It's like everything seems to be like this cycle, right? Like it's not like it's a speculation. It's literally actively being done by some dude on TikTok who's literally trying to get this thing out there because just like myself and everyone else, we're trying to fight the corruption. Again, without carbon dioxide, assuming that you believe it's all carbon dioxide and not silicon dioxide, which would be silicate, which is widely available everywhere, especially because oxygen is the most abundant element. The second is silicon dioxide. Where else do I find silicon dioxide? Well, there's this thing right here called calcium silicate. It's in my salt. They call it an anti-caking agent, but it's not like it's required for you. And why do they pick carbon? Well, because carbon can bond with 4 different things, just like silicon. But carbon is the strongest bonds because, look at how strong we are. It's not like we don't fall apart instantly the second we stop, eating and moving. Let's say everything goes worst case scenario, right? More storms, flooding in some areas, droughts in the other. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, less coastal area. So like basically we just like relocate people, move their houses back, build a wall. That's pretty simple. All right, what's the next thing? We've got stronger storms. Okay, so we just build stronger walls. Basically, just rebar this thick. You just go that thick. You make the wall this thick to that thick. All right, so it's pretty good. You don't even have to do better materials. Well, what's the other problem with this whole thing? Oh yeah, that's right. They said flooding in some areas, droughts in others. I mean, I think that's what already happens here. But just like assume that we can't, like, I don't know, solve that in any sort of a way. Like we can't move water. Like, I don't know, build a drain, attach pipes, and put the pipes other places. Maybe even add a pump or anything of that kind. Put dirt, pile it up, whatever, how to stop the flooding here and then the drought over there. And then something about a threat to the biodiversity. Well, a cold isn't a threat to the biodiversity. It's an existential crisis. It extinguishes everything. So what would possibly be a threat with heat? Well, with the drought and the changing, maybe the environment adapts in a way in which animals themselves aren't able to adapt quick enough to it. And so what I'm thinking that we do is like we just relocate them. We can literally build zoos. We've got like helicopters. We got everything we need. So it's like, oh, look, this life over here doesn't seem to be understanding that the environment's changing and it's not moving. How about we just move it? Because, that's really pretty simple to do. Look, guys, we got to stop doing this nonsense where we're like putting all of our money in like these large industries that are run by one company. And these companies are all controlled by really, really, really old people. Still teaching kids how to multiply decimals by hand like they're a calculator, or how to play trivia. Or maybe they want to do some social studies work where they learn about people around the world instead of just getting online and communicating with a translated app and talking to a kid their age where they can ask questions and be interested. Better we just tell them about it in a book abstractly and test them on it with red ink. Look, I've been trying to solve problems. So that's where I picked up the mechanical, electrical, software, materials manufacturing. I picked up mechanical. I went into mechanical because it's the most diverse engineering. Then when I wanted to get PhDs, they told me that I had to specialize. I said PhDs because I wanted one in physics too, because I was under the impression that a PhD would mean that you learn more, that you'd be more educated. I recognized by my senior year that after having just done my own side project, that I had been doing nothing this whole time. The idea that I'm going to sit down inside of a class and learn how to do an orbital mechanics problem, pencil and paper. I have half an equation sheet. I can't communicate with the people next to me because that's cheating. I've got the internet in my pocket. I can't use it. I have a book in my backpack I can't take out because it's got to be in here. Because one day you might need to solve the problem of, the 2-stage, 3-stage launch problem into space doing a Humming transfer, and you got to do it without a computer because, that somehow you just, what? Like, God damn, that's the most insane idea I've ever heard of. Trying to prepare us for what? Even a McDonald's employee has a Big Mac button. Here I am trying to figure out yeah, that's the kind of crazy stuff we do. Sitting there in heat transfer, they're like, what's the temperature of this end right here? And you're looking at like, a fin inside of an insulator. It doesn't make any damn sense. It's got internal heat generation. And it's attached to a wall. And they give us all these temperatures. So I'm like, how did you measure these temperatures? And not just measure that one. It's like, oh no, that's the problem. The problem is like, this is what you just type that into a computer program and then it spits out a number. But instead, we're going to measure everything because that's how do you measure it with what device and at what point in time and what conditions. Don't worry about that. We're going to do it for you. And then we're going to ask you to do some arbitrary solution that already exists. And with the whole pyrolysis process, the fact that you can literally get oil from heating plastic in the absence of oxygen, and then we're just sitting there talking about like, carbon capture, what it's at. Well, we're at the plant, at the source of the carbon dioxide, basically like an exhaust pipe. And then we're taking that, we're compressing it back down into a liquid, and then we're forcing it into the earth, and then out pops oil at the other side. Meanwhile, there's a guy on TikTok that's like, I made this out of plastic. Here we are collecting up all of our plastic to be recycled, but it's like, you can't even effectively recycle plastic the way people think you can, because if you're manufacturing a plastic product, you're already going to have waste plastic, and you can mix some of that back in. But at the end of the day, putting too much waste plastic in degrades the product because plastic degrades. You can't just arbitrarily melt it and remelt it and recrystallize. Like, you can't keep doing that because every time it degrades. And so now, like most of the time, plastic's just burned, or it's CO2 captured. Because the whole concept of trying to filter 0.4%, there's one particle out of like 2,000 something particles that's attached to our life. And we need to build a machine that's going to generate more as it tries to take it out. And then we're going to force it into the earth because carbon, the building block of life, that's the thing that we need to do away with. It's bad.